As this campaign of conversion took off in the West, the Jews who did not want to convert gradually gravitated toward the East. And at this point, it was Poland that became what they called the Paradisus Judaeorum, the paradise of the Jews, beginning in around the 13th century, which was about when the campaign started to kick off, the conversion campaign. And so the Jews gradually migrated there. Gradually, they were given rights, and in a sense, this was the beginning of the problem. They were given special status, and that status allowed them. They exploited that status through their main weapon was usury. And basically, everywhere the Jew went, he alienated the local population until the reaction came, and that was the Chmielnicki pogroms of 1648. The Polish ruling class was a land-based aristocracy. And land-based aristocracies always have trouble with money. In a sense, the feudal period in Europe was basically you owned the land and you had people on the land, and those people owed you X number of bushels of grain. But you need money right now. So how are you going to transfer those long-term prospects into short-term cash? Well, that's where the Jew came in terms of lending money. So this is basically how they took control of the Polish aristocracy, by lending money. They did the same thing in England. They lent the landed aristocracy money, and if the Jew lends you money, you become the slave of the Jew. Polish aristocracy felt that they could not engage in, they couldn't, for example, make whiskey. That was beneath the dignity of the Polish aristocracy. So they would give licenses to the Jews. Well, the Jews exploited this as a way of taking control of the peasantry. They used alcohol as one of their weapons of cultural warfare. And that was a constant tradition among the Jews and was brought over here, and it's dealt with in Henry Ford's International Jew. And the final moment came at the end of the 18th century when Poland was wiped off the face of the map by the three Prussia, Austria, and Russia. This meant that all of those Jews in the Paradisus Judaeorum, where they had all of these rights in Poland, were now suddenly found themselves on the western border of Russia, in a country that did not believe in equal rights for anyone. It was totally anti-enlightenment. It was a throwback to another era. And so as a result, the Jews were unhappy. I mean, very unhappy. And you see to this day this ancestral hatred of Russia among the Jews. And it began with this group of people now isolated. They're not citizens. They are not going to be allowed to have the rights of citizens. They're isolated in these shtetl, in a group area called the Pale of the Settlement. And the crucial issue is this is precisely the border with the West. So the Jews now become involved in smuggling, revolutionary activity, and this is, beginning at this point, Russia has a huge revolutionary problem on its hands, which it could not solve. It tried to solve in a humane fashion. Solzhenitsyn brings this out in his book, 200 Years Together, which has not been translated into English because of Jewish veto. A rabbi vetoed this. So you cannot read this book in English. You know, this is a Nobel Prize winner, one of the greatest writers of the 20th century, and his book is not going to be translated into English because Jews have veto power over the publishing industry in the United States. And in this book, Solzhenitsyn talks about the problems from the beginning. From the beginning of the partition of Russia, Russia had swallowed something that it could not digest. And so the Tsar hears that there are reports of starvation in the Ukraine. Well, wait a minute. The Ukraine is the breadbasket of Europe. How is it that people are starving? What's the answer to that question? The answer is the Jews. The Jews had lent money to the Ukrainian farmers, and so your farmers couldn't pay it back, and so they owned the grain harvest, and they were diverting all the grain to alcohol rather than to bread, and people were starving to death in the richest agricultural area of Russia. And so the Tsar, well, we have to deal with this. Well, let's turn the Jews into farmers. Well, that failed, because the Jew is not going to work as a farmer, because farming is hard work. And so you give the Jew a plow, what's he going to do? He'll sell it. You know, any farm implements, he sells them and tries to then take that money and parlay that into something else. So that failed. And so as a result, you have this increasing revolutionary ferment in the Pale of the Settlement that leads to the assassination of the Tsar in 1881. I've been in St. Petersburg where he fell on the ground. They built this elaborate Russian Orthodox church, the Church of the Sacred Blood. So it's like this resurgence of Russian nationalism as the response to Jewish aggression, right there in the heart of St. Petersburg. But it didn't work. The Tsar, the Romanovs, could not come to grips with Jewish revolutionary behavior.